Alright, so today I'm going to be making a video about Ableton and all the features of Ableton Live 9 and why you would possibly want to switch over to it, and I'm just going to be going over some of the basic features and functionalities of Ableton and kind of demystifying it for those that don't understand how it works or just new to it. And I'm on the OS X version, but this is the same exact version as on a Windows computer. So yeah, hopefully you learned some stuff, and I'm just gonna be quick and to the point, and I already have everything laid out that I want to go over, and I'm sure you'll learn some stuff. So let's get into it. I don't know if you can hear it, but whatever. Anyways, Ableton does a great job when it comes to organization and providing a clean workspace to produce in. You have a lot of options when it comes to organizing your libraries, your plugins, your presets, and the layout is spotless. Browsing through large sample libraries and loops and layering sounds is easy, and overall it's a great option if you're seeking to maximize your workflow and efficiency. Ableton's sidebar is separated into two sections: categories, which is where all the factory content from Ableton is permanently installed and where your plugins can be found; and places, which displays the samples, presets, and other content you have added and can be fully customized based on how you choose to arrange the folders on your hard drive. Audio in your folders are auditioned and played quickly and automatically when you scroll through them in Ableton. This is very helpful for efficiently finding the perfect sample for what you need at any given moment without ever having to exit your DAW and browse manually through your hard drive. Your plugins under the category section can also be organized in the same way your samples and content can, which is important to note. An important part of workflow is being able to maintain an organized workspace, and Ableton has definitely done a good job of that when it comes to file management. In Ableton, as in many other DAWs, your songs will be arranged into multiple tracks which are separated into two categories: MIDI and audio. MIDI tracks hold plugins, instruments, and samplers which then can be played with MIDI pattern clips, and audio tracks just hold audio clips such as MP3 or WAV files. Tracks can be muted with the yellow rectangles at the end of each one. If you are coming from FL Studio, then you are used to being able to place patterns and audio files in the same tracks, but it is important to remember that this does not work in Ableton, which can be confusing at first. Instrument and effect racks are another excellent organizational feature in Ableton. Instrument racks essentially can be filled with any combination of plugins, samples, and effects, and then placed within a MIDI track to be used and controlled as a single instrument. Within the instrument rack, 8 controls called macros can be mapped to any parameter within the plugins or effects. Layering sounds is an important part of creating excellent music, and instrument racks allow you to do just that without having to take up enormous amounts of space with lots of separate tracks in your arrangement. Effects racks are essentially the same as instrument racks, except they hold effects and effect plugins and cannot hold synthesizers or instruments or plugins that are instruments. If you are just experimenting with combinations of sounds and effects or have created an interesting chain, you can save and name your rack as a preset for later use, which you can find in your user library under the Places category. Ableton also has a session view, which basically acts like a place where you can record and store clips within the song you are making. It is completely separate from the arrangement window and should be ignored completely. if you are just seeking to arrange a song and not to launch clips with your mouse. That being said, you can actually drag and drop clips from the session view to your arrangement view and vice versa, which can be useful if you want to save some space and get clips out of the way of your arrangement to use them later in your productions. The session view displays all the same tracks as your arrangement view but vertically. It is also possible to separate the session view into a second window, which works well with multi-monitor or 4K setups. To switch back and forth between your session and arrangement views, you can hit Tab. Something you will eventually notice about Ableton is that everything other than the session view is essentially displayed on one large page and can be resized or collapsed as desired. Even your MIDI and audio tracks can be grouped with Command G or collapsed with the click of a button to save space for other windows you may be working in. Everything that is going on is visible at once, which can be overwhelming to some beginners and frighten them away. But this is actually one of the biggest reasons why many people, including myself, absolutely love using Ableton. Having everything on one page saves time when it comes to switching your focus to different aspects of your songs, like working on melodies, messing with effect parameters, or browsing through samples and plugins. Along with all these collapsible windows, there is also an info section at the bottom left, which displays information about all the windows, buttons, and knobs within the program when you hover over them. This useful feature can also be collapsed to save space when you don't need it. The way Ableton reads notes and plays sounds is through MIDI and audio clips, which are also known as patterns and samples in other digital audio workspaces, or DAWs. To create a MIDI clip, you make a selection the size of the clip you want to create and hit Command, Shift, and M. Within each clip there are parameters that you can edit, and if there are MIDI clips, a piano roll window will open where you can draw in notes. Once you have drawn in notes by either double-clicking each space where you want one to appear or using the drawing tool by pressing B, you can move notes around, shorten and stretch them by dragging, or copy and paste the selection of notes you have made to a different location. Once audio clips and MIDI clips are created, they can be shortened as desired or looped if stretched outwards as well. Editing MIDI and audio clips is simple and intuitive in this program. Ableton doesn't give you a ton of useless mouse modes such as slicing and selection tools, and all the functions you could possibly need for modifying clips can be performed with just your mouse and keyboard. The only exception is the draw mode, which allows you to draw in notes and modify envelopes in automation more quickly, but it is not indispensable. To slice clips, you highlight the portion you would like to move and drag it up or down slightly, or move it to where you want it to go, and it will be separated. You can copy and paste a selection with Command C and Command V. To duplicate clips, you highlight the portion you want to have replicated and paste it over to the next open space and press Command D. This will only duplicate the selected portion, so make sure you have selected the whole clip if that is what you want to duplicate. Clips are also automatically made unique, so when you are editing a copy or a duplicate, it will not affect the original, which is something that FL Studio users may come to appreciate. When selecting audio clips, you are given more modifiers within them, such as reversing, transposing, warping, which we will go over later, and multiple BPM matching options. With MIDI clips, you are given a similar looking menu, but with a few different options such as doubling or halving the speed of a selection, legato, and inverting the notes. Both MIDI and audio clips also have automation envelopes that you can use to automate functions such as pitch throughout the clip. It is also important to note that MIDI clips can be dragged from one MIDI track to another and aren't limited to the track you created them in. This goes for audio clips too. Sometimes you may want to join certain melodies or even a selection of audio clips into one, and this is completely possible in Ableton. To join separated clips, you select the entire area you want joined and hit Command and J. This is very useful for filling gaps in your arrangement view or expanding a MIDI clip that was made too short. A very useful feature in Ableton is audio to MIDI. When you try to drag audio files to MIDI tracks, it will not allow the move, but will ask whether the audio sample is a melody of single notes, a harmony of chords and notes, or a drum arrangement. Depending on what you select, Ableton will try its best to recreate the melody, harmony, and rhythm of an audio clip as a MIDI clip instead. The estimation tends to be accurate, but it may not work well depending on the complexity of the audio clip, but there are other options in Ableton such as the spectrum analyzer and the tuner that can identify notes as well if audio to MIDI doesn't work. You can also transform a MIDI clip into an audio clip by right-clicking and freezing a MIDI track and dragging a selection of it into an audio track. When you do this, it will also apply the effects of the track to the audio, so you need to be sure to select more than just the MIDI clip if you are using a delay or reverb on the track. You can also unfreeze the MIDI track and keep working in it when you are done converting it to a sample if you would like. Once a MIDI track is converted to audio, you can proceed to manipulate it in different ways within the clip view window of an audio track. This leads us to our third feature, which is audio warping. So, as you could tell, there's a very fine line between MIDI and audio clips in Ableton, and both seem to work together as one. And this is actually one of the many reasons why people like it when it comes to working with samples and raw audio. And audio warping is another one of the reasons why people enjoy Ableton so much, because it's so well integrated into the program. When you open an audio clip, Ableton gives you the option of warping the audio. What warping allows you to do is place markers at key points such as transients or peaks in an audio file and move these key points around, which effectively gives you the ability to modify the audio's timing to however you see fit. Most of the time, Ableton will automatically place warp markers where it estimates that a clip needs them, but this isn't always accurate, and you may want to turn off warping and put it back on to make your own edits if that is the case. Doing your own edits is useful for things like correcting recordings or vocals that are a bit off and stretching or shrinking small samples that are either too long or too short as they are. The different warp modes available can also produce interesting effects with your edits as well if you are just looking to be creative with your samples. Warping in Ableton is also how you match a clip's tempo with your arrangement. Ableton will automatically try to estimate the tempo of a clip, and most of the time it will be right with things like short loops and drums, but it can also make a lot of mistakes. To match the tempo of a file you know the tempo of, but Ableton doesn't, you just need to turn off warping and turn it back on so that the audio is in its original state with just one marker at the beginning, and then change the tempo value to the correct number. You can also disable automatic warping in the preferences of Ableton if you do not want Ableton to estimate where the warp markers need to be placed, or if you do not want Ableton to estimate the tempo of a clip automatically. Another interesting feature with warping in Ableton is the groove pool. The core Ableton library contains a large selection of different grooves that can be applied to different MIDI or warped audio clips. In each clip, whether it's MIDI or audio, there is a groove option. There you can apply a certain beat timing or swing to a clip. When you apply a groove to a warped audio track, all the markers will be slightly displaced to match the timing of the groove. You can also make the grooves affect velocity and volume as well. In the case of MIDI clips, all the notes inside will be slightly displaced to match the groove, and the velocities will be adjusted for each one if you have velocity activated in your groove pool. Grooves can also be extracted from your own audio and MIDI clips and applied to completely different clips in other tracks too, which can make for very interesting melodic rhythms when you take a groove from, say, a shaker loop and apply it to a bass line or lead instead. Using grooves to slightly modify the timing of your sounds is a great and easy way to effectively humanize your tracks and increase the overall complexity of your compositions. Ableton has also included drum racks and a sampler to be able to play audio clips like instruments, which is nice. With drum racks, you can load up drum samples into different slots and play your drums as MIDI clips, as opposed to dragging a ton of samples into audio tracks and taking up lots of space for your beats. When using the sampler, you can load up a sample, and when you play different notes, the sampler will automatically transpose the file to match your keystrokes, which allows you to get infinitely creative with just one simple audio file. Within the sampler, you also have access to tons of parameters such as legato and polyphony, and you can also change the ADSR settings, the attack, decay, sustain, release settings of the sample in a different tab of the sampler as well. There are also options to launch different samples at different ranges of your keyboard if you wish to get more complicated and precise with it. These are just a few of the things you can do with sampling in Ableton, and there is much more to it than just this, but to save time, I have cut it down to just the basics.
Alright, I turn on the lights so the lighting is different, but you guys can see that. Effects and automation are an important part of creating an interesting track, and when you double click on a MIDI or audio track, a bar at the bottom of your page will pop up showing an effects chain. Within the effects chain, you can drop in Ableton's built-in audio effects, an effects rack, or your own effects plugins. You can also add effects to group tracks and to the master track if you desire. The effects you place in your chain will be applied in order from left to right, and you can toggle each effect on and off by hitting a button in the top left corner of each one. To open up a third-party effect plugin to edit its parameters, you can hit the wrench up near its toggle button in the chain.
In Ableton, they have added MIDI effects, which when dropped into a MIDI track will appear in front of a plugin, instrument, or synthesizer. These special effects modify the MIDI inputs of a MIDI clip or keyboard before they reach the plugin, sampler, or synthesizer. There are various effects to choose from, including an arpeggiator, note length modifier, velocity modifier, chord generator, and a scale modifier, which allows you to always play in your own customizable scale even when the wrong keys are being hit. There are also MIDI effect racks that function similarly to regular effects racks and can produce some pretty awesome results with the right sequence of MIDI effects. An important part of having an interesting sound design is being able to automate the parameters of your sounds and effects. In Ableton, automation is extremely simple. When you tweak almost any parameter within a track, a red dotted line will appear on the track that corresponds to that setting. You can then proceed to draw in an automation either by double-clicking the points where you want the curve to go, or by activating the draw mode with B and drawing a curve. Once you have made a line between 2 points, it is also possible to make the line bend upwards or downwards by holding Alt and pulling the line up or down. Once you have automated a setting, the dotted line will become solid and a red square will appear next to the parameters that have been affected in a menu under the track name. You can clear envelopes by right-clicking a track and hitting Clear Envelope, and depending on which curve is visible, the automation will be cleared and the red square will go away. Automating envelopes within MIDI and audio clips is also possible within the envelope section of each clip when you click the small E in the bottom left corner of the clip menu. If you tweak parameters within a plugin that have already been automated, the automation will automatically be turned off, so it is important to hit the re-enable automation button near the top of the window when that happens. Automation works with all instruments, effects, MIDI effects, and third-party plugins. Sometimes when using samplers or messing with vocals and other audio, you may need to find the key of a sample, and Ableton has provided a tuner and spectrum for that. The tuner is automatically enabled when you add it to a track and shows the note a sound or plugin is making on its interface. The tuner also has a histogram view, which is just a different way of looking at the notes. The tuner has a flaw, which is that it cannot pick up chords or harmonies, which is when the spectrum tool comes in handy. The spectrum will show you a graph of all the frequencies of a sound while it is playing, and to find the notes in a chord, you just hold your mouse over the peaks of the graph, and the note will be displayed for each peak. The only flaw with the spectrum is that it also picks up tons of extra noise which crowd the plugin interface and can make it hard to read at times, but you can enlarge the spectrum with the small arrow on its interface if that is the case. Both of these tools can be found in the audio effects section under categories in the sidebar. Alright, so now you know all of the noteworthy features of Ableton Live. This is version 9.5, and so now you just get you have the basic gist of how it works. There are a few features that I didn't go over, such as sends or buses, and there are things that I didn't spend enough time on, like the sampler, and there are a lot of other things like that that I didn't spend enough time on, but I wanted to make this short and to the point, and I wanted to cram in every single bit of information that I could. So yeah, there are other things that you can collapse and stuff, but anyways, if you learned something, I hope that you liked the video or that you are in the process of doing that, and I encourage you to do more research into features of Ableton that you don't understand or that I didn't cover, and I encourage you to comment down below too if you have anything to say or if there's anything that I forgot. But anyways, this is getting pretty long, so I would like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.